Hey everybody, this is Roberto Blake of robertoblake.com helping you create something awesome today. So, welcome to another Adobe Audition tutorial. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to edit a podcast using Adobe Audition. This is actually the workflow that I use for editing the Create Something Awesome Today podcast, which is over in SoundCloud and iTunes. You should definitely check it out. And what I do is I record directly into Adobe Audition. So I've already done that. I've got an episode ready to go here for you guys. And what I'm going to show you is how I use multi-track sessions, and I use the podcast template in Adobe Audition to go ahead and edit that and to go ahead and mix in my music and what have you. So this is an example of doing it without doing an interview. So I'll show you guys how in another tutorial how to edit interviews in Adobe Audition. But let's go ahead and edit a basic podcast. It's actually simpler than you might think, assuming that I've already edited here, cut out everything that I don't like. I have the full episode already done. But let's go ahead and show you how to do that and set this up. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to File and New, and we're going to start a new multi-track session. And we're going to use the podcast template. There's a bunch of templates here. We're just going to use podcast. And I'm going to label this session name CSAT Podcast 24. Because that stands for Create Something Awesome Today. And we're going to hit OK. All right. So we have that. And we've got our main tracks here. And you can see how we would do this if we had an interview. We got the host, which is me. We've got our interview, so that would be the guest, and then we have any sound effects, and then we have our music bed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this raw file here, which is the episode, and I'm just going to lay that down here where it says host. So now I have that in place. If I want to zoom in on any of this stuff kind of to see it a little bit better, I can just go ahead and do that. Up here, I can scrub through different parts of the podcast. So this is an example of just playing through it real quick. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Create Something Awesome Today podcast. This is your host, Roberto Blake. All right, so you can see how that's working out and that it does pick up initially the sound from the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fade that in a very sharp fashion, and that's going to improve things. Let's take a look. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Create Something Awesome Today podcast. This is your host, Roberto Blake. So that helps a bit, but I think we can do better. So first of all, one of the first things we did is we trimmed that up. And then we're just going to go ahead and adjusting this. We're not going to let the audio really get going until about where I'm speaking, and we can see that here in the audio form. So I've just kind of adjusted that, and then our music bed will kind of make up the difference there. So let's see how that works in playback. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Create Something Awesome Today podcast. As you can see, that works a lot better. Now, the volume seems a little loud, so I'm just going to pull that back a little bit so that it's not spiking as much. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Create Something Awesome Today podcast. This is your host, Roberto. That's pretty much perfect right now. So this is already shaping up really well. And because of the way I do this podcast is super simple, all I have to do now is drop in my intro and outro music. Now, in my case, I got my background music from Audio Blocks, and it's pretty standard. You guys also hear this same audio music in my live stream, and you also hear it in my outros in terms of my end cards for YouTube. So I'm going to just drag that here into the files that I'm using for this session, and that means that you can just use it multiple times. And I'm going to drop it here where it says Music Bed. And I'm going to fade it in over here, and it usually fades out on its own. And then I'm going to zoom out just so I can kind of see everything in the timeline. And that timeline is about roughly 24 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this. I'm going to hold down Alt, and I'm going to drag it here to the end, which I made a duplicate basically. And now I'm just aligning this and and snapping it to the end of the episode, as you can see here. So that trails off on its own at about roughly the same time. And there we go. So now I have my outro. And again, this is going to end up, needing to be mixed down so that it doesn't overpower my voice. Watch. So important. So we're going to need to mix this down so it doesn't overpower my voice. I know by default it's going to do that, so let me just show you. Just build that body of work, guys. Invest in it. It is so important. I cannot stress that enough. So I need more subtle fade over time with that. So let's go ahead and just kind of do that. And let's go ahead and lower this down. I think usually I put it down to around maybe 25, 24, something like that. Invest in it. It is so important. I cannot stress that enough. Well, that's it for today's show. Question of the day. How many executions have you done right now for the year? Right now, this is August 2017. Tell me something. For the year of 2017, how many pieces in your body of work and whatever you're executing on right now, what have you done? And are you going to go out there and create something awesome today? All right, so we need to bring that down just a little bit more. I think maybe -30 is the right amount. Every day, are you going to ramp that number up? There's still plenty of time this year for you to get 100 new pieces of... And what that does is this affects not only the outro here, but it affects the intro as well, because this is a track layer. Similar to when we do this in Adobe Premiere, it affects everything on this portion of the timeline. Talk about building your body of work. Building your body of work is probably one of the most important things you can do as a creative person, as an entrepreneur, pretty much as anyone that's building their brand, whether that's for their business or if you're developing a personal brand. All right, so that actually works out really well for us. This is pretty much done at this point. So a couple of things. If I felt like I needed to do anything with the voice portion of this, which automatically the presets here for speech leveler are in place, I could just do any number of things, and that would potentially improve the overall audio. Cleanup and voice leveler, for example, could do that. But I actually don't think I need it in this case. My stuff is usually pretty clean just because of the type of microphone that I use, which is the same one I use in these tutorials. So typically I don't need to do that, but just know that these presets are here and that they can help you. So we're pretty much done at this point, and we just need to save. So once we've saved, we need to export this so that we can put it into iTunes, SoundCloud, wherever we want to host it. I'm also going to probably link down to some hosting for podcast, as well as all the tools that you need for podcast in terms of hardware, software, web hosting, everything you need to do a podcast. I'm going to link to the description of this video so that you guys can go ahead and grab those resources. But here in the metadata in Adobe Audition, this is the secret sauce. We're going to go ahead and fill this out so that this works for search. This goes ahead and puts that information to iTunes, everything that we want. So I put in the title, which I'm also going to select all and copy. All right, so we've got all of that, and now it's time to export a file. I'm going to export this both as an MP3 and as a WAV file, just so that I have it lossless. So it's going to be what's called a multi-track mixdown, and we're going to select the entire session. And so I'm going to do this and export it as a WAV. I'm going to hit OK. And that's just going to go ahead and export it to my designated folder that I have set up specifically for all of these podcast files. And then I'm just going to repeat the process and do it as an MP3 as well. MP3s are a smaller overall file, which means that if your web hosting for your podcast goes by file size, which a lot of them do, then that will help you do that conservatively. If you want to go ahead and host the entire thing in its complete wave, uncompressed, as a backup on your actual website, I host it there. I just don't put access to it except in an emergency, and I also upload the MP3 there. So that's just something, again, strategically that you can do to make sure that you have your files. In my case, I also back this stuff up to the Adobe Creative Cloud, because that's part of one of the benefits of the subscription model that everyone whines so much about. So I'm just going to do this as an MP3 as well. And that's going to be considerably smaller. It's going to take about the same time to export, though. And that will give me the file that I want to upload for SoundCloud. So that's pretty much exactly how I edit my podcast. Again, it gets more complicated depending on what you have to do. If I were combining a pre-recorded intro with this, I would be adding another track here. But mostly I do everything in one take. Believe it or not, that's exactly how I do it. If you guys have seen me live stream, then you know that that's kind of my workflow, is to do everything in one take and just edit out my flubs. And again, that's just super simple. But this is how I assemble and set my podcast. Like I said, if I had sound effects, I would drop them in here. If I had another interview, I would do that. So I will do a more complicated version of this at some point that walks you through what that process is. But this is just really simple, and I think this is probably the simplest workflow for editing a podcast for many of you who are just getting started. Many of you will do this more or less in one take, just record everything as one file, edit out your mistakes, and you can just drop it in, put your intro and outro, mix it down, and then if there were places you wanted to add sound effects, you could just drop them in there, listen for it on your monitor headphones. This is how you do your metadata. And, you just put your whole title in there, you just do your thing, list yourself as the artist, and then when you upload this to whatever hosting and distribute it to SoundCloud, all that stuff will show up. So this is literally exactly how I make my podcast, if you guys were wondering. And you can check out that podcast at createsomethingawesometoday.com, or you can type in Roberto Blake or Create Something Awesome Today into iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, pretty much all the places, and you'll be able to find it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you have questions about podcasting, definitely leave those in the comments of the video, and I will try and help you guys out with that. Make sure you're checking out the other videos that I have on the YouTube channel and in my playlist. And as always, you guys, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget, create something awesome today. Take care.